Good evening, everyone. My name is Gwen. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to spend with you in the following months to study the Treasure Island together. I assume that in our online classroom, there are more students in grade 5 to 7. So I will be speaking mostly English with the moderate speed, but maybe I will combine some Chinese. Well, we can always discuss at the end of the class or in the group discussion if it's better to speak more English or speak Chinese. So in which way it works better for you. So we can talk that after class. So before our class, there is another point that I would like to stress before we start the novel. Because in the past, I have been asked by many students who are really bookworms. They really like to read, but they simply don't like to read the world literature classics. My suggestion is that if you are one of them, just think about the importance of literature in life. Or if you have really never seriously thought of that, I will just let you know a little bit for the role of literature in the whole life for every person. So literature masterpieces are really valuable cultural heritage. And really, it usually reflects the culture and history of a country or area in a specific period of time. Literature can not only present us with very beautiful writing, very vivid and detailed descriptions of characters and their character traits, appearance, and also the scenes in the story. A masterpiece literature can also present the readers a specific period of history. As readers, we should really read beyond the literal meanings and understand what the author really wants to convey to us beyond the text. So today we'll be starting this journey of exploring a literary world through a novel, Treasure Island, written by the Scottish author Robert Louis Stevenson, as early as 100 years ago. I think that many of you might have read a little bit of this novel, or some of you I know have read the simplified version. You might have known the creation of this novel was a bit anecdote at the very beginning. Could you imagine that before the creation of this novel, the author had already created an imaginary map? So it was said that was on a really cold day, the author Robert Louis Stevenson drew a map, an imaginary map with his stepson. See, so they only did it for fun, but it turned out to be a very successful story, a novel, which was published at the very beginning in 17 installments in a local magazine, and then it was officially published as a novel in 1883. So according to the novel, it was estimated the whole story occurred around 1750s. Like always, when you read a novel, first you should think of the setting. So as a very important literary term, setting means the time and the space of a story. It can be a very macro, social, historical, cultural background. It also can be the specific time and space of the specific story. So regarding the physical and historical location of this novel we are going to learn together, Treasure Island, the story occurred on the west coast of England. And finally, their treasure hunting also ended up coming back to England as well. So How about the historical location of the story? Have you ever thought of what the world looked like during the 1750s? During this period, if you know a little bit history, so Spain was still dominant both in the international trade and also its colonies in America. But pay attention, during this period, England as a new international power was really growing rapidly. So England during this period had conquered a couple of, or quite some islands from Spain in the West Indies. So you will see quite a couple of times during this novel that the main characters are talking about the Spanish in a rather sarcastic way. So now let's come to the first chapter, The Old Sea Dog at the Admiral Benbow, and part 1, The Old Buccaneer. So for now, let's switch to the text of the novel so that we can read together for the very beginning. If you have the novel at hand, please also feel free to turn on to page 1. So let's all together see or read the first paragraph. Let's see how the author started the whole novel. So for here you see, from the very beginning, Squire Trelawney, Dr. Livesey, and the rest of these gentlemen having asked me to write down the whole particulars about Treasure Island, from the beginning to the end, keeping nothing but the bearings of the island, and that only because there is still treasure not yet lifted. I take up my pen in the year of grace 17 and go back to the time when my father kept the Admiral Benbow Inn, and the brown old seaman with the saber cut first took up his lodging under our roof. So did you notice that the novel was narrated from the first person point of view? So the narrator is the boy, Jim Hawkins. He's the son of this innkeeper. He's the son. So their small inn is located in Bristol, England. Jim, the speaker, also the narrator, the person who tells the story, he was about the pre-teen age. So it would be about from 10 to 12. So at the very beginning of the novel, the author started the novel using the tone of the first person, just like a person was reading a memoir. So Jim was to record the whole stories of their treasure hunting after the story was finished. So according to this novel, it is from Jim's perspective. So everything is written and spoken from the voice of Jim. So when you read the very beginning of any novel, just think very critically and imagine. Just for this novel, think about it as a boy at a pre-teen age. What personality traits does a pre-teen boy usually demonstrate? Well, the whole story is told from his personage. Okay, so Jim, as we say, is also the main character or the protagonist of the whole story. I think you might know a little bit from your class. As a literary term, protagonist is a word from Greek, which means leading person in a contest. So in this novel, Jim brings to you, when he starts the whole story, by describing another character, the captain, which is the antagonist we call in literature. Antagonist means the opponent or rival or enemy. So here, the captain, Billy Bones, plays a very important role in the development of the whole plot. You will see how the sequence of events that tells the complete story from the second paragraph. So for here, let me introduce you another very attractive description that I feel. Here, please turn to page 1 and also let's read the second paragraph. Let's see how this main character, he's the antagonist, a force or a character that works against the main character, Jim. So let's see how the author presents such a vivid figure by describing his appearance. So let me show you from the second paragraph. I remember him as if it were yesterday, as he came plodding to the inn door, his sea chest falling behind him in a hand barrel, a tall, strong, heavy, nut brown man, his tarry pigtail falling over the shoulder of his soiled blue coat, his hands ragged and scarred with black broken nails, and the saber cut across one cheek, a dirty, vivid right. So what I would like to draw your attention to this paragraph, the reason is, in a novel, a detailed description of a character on appearance or personality traits is very important. It attracts our attention. So for here, the author introduced another main character, Billy Bones. The whole story, I think the wording or the choices of word are not that complicated. But the author uses a lot of detailed descriptions. So the reason why I stress this point, because in your daily writing, this detailed description is attached to creative writing. So the more you practice to write more detailed description, the more creative or the more attractive your writing will be. So whenever we read a novel, especially a literature classics, I always really recommend my students to pay attention to these details, to see how the author writes these description on the character, no matter if they are the main characters or the minor characters. So this is the first paragraph that I see important to both your learning of literary description, but also from the point that it's good for you to master how to write in a creative way, to write more detailed, to describe the details instead of simply tell, but show the details and write. So for now, let's continue to the second description that I feel important. So let's turn to page 5. Let me show you page here. So for here, let me see. Here. How that, from this paragraph, how that personage haunted my dreams, I need scarcely tell you. On stormy nights, when the wind shook the four corners of the house and the surf roared along the cove and up the cliffs, I would see him in 1,000 forms and with 1,000 diabolical expressions. Now the leg would be cut off at the knee, now at the hip. Now he was a monstrous kind of a creature who had never had but the one leg, and that in the middle of his body, To see him leap and run and pursue me over hedge and ditch was the worst of nightmares. And altogether, I paid pretty dear for my monthly 4-penny piece in the shape of these abominable fancies. So this paragraph, I also like it very much because it's a very detailed description of Jim's thoughts. In the whole story, even in this chapter 1, this part is the description of what Jim was pondering. It's actually also a little bit humorous because you can feel that with the appearance of Billy Bones, it was very scared. And then he assigned Jim a mission to pay attention to the one-leg pirate. So Jim was paid by the 4 pennies, and Jim was also excited, even though this one-leg pirate was very scared. But Jim felt also excited to do this mission. So for this paragraph, the description to Jim's thoughts was also what we should learn to express the ideas or to comment on the internal world of a character's thoughts. So for here, I think there are a couple of new words that you might pay attention. Here is a high level of academic vocabulary. I would say diabolical. Diabolical means extremely evil. So for here, you might feel maybe also not very familiar. Abominable also means very bad or unpleasant. So in the whole novel, like I said, the structure of grammar was not that complicated, but the author is really good at using very important or accurate words to create the effects that are different. For example, here it says diabolical and abominable. It's the academic level word that produces a kind of effect that the readers are not only children, but also it can be adults. Also, when we judge a literary masterpiece, the reason why we love to read a literary masterpiece because the author is always good at using the choices of word. So this is another reason why I just draw your attention to it. And also, let's move on to the next paragraph that I see also important that I would like to share with you is at the end of the chapter 1. Let me show you. So here, all the time he lived with us, the captain made no change whatever in his dress, but to buy some stockings from a hawker. One of the cocks of his hat having fallen down, he let it hang from the day forth. Though it was a great annoyance when it blew, I remember the appearance of his coat, which he patched himself upstairs in his room, and which before the end was nothing but patches. He never wrote or received a letter, and he never spoke with any but the neighbors, and with these, for the most part, only when drunk or rum, the great sea chest none of us had ever seen open. So this paragraph is also a vivid description of a personality trait. Lee's description of the characters, both physically and regarding their personality traits, helps express the atmosphere of the novel. So when we say the atmosphere as a literary term, it refers to the mood in the setting or in a character's frame of mind. So after you read this chapter 1, you know that a very evil figure, the Captain Billy Bones, appeared, and you might feel he's a main character. But finally, it turned out that he was dead, and even though he's not the main character, he's the very important minor character, or in the whole novel, he's still very important. So he presents to us a very evil image. But from this description, even though the description was not that complicated, wording is not that difficult, but the description is very detailed. So it presents to us a face rather humorous. So the author just inserted a little bit introduction of his character, as if the author was thinking to balance his evil side. But eventually, you know, evil is evil. So the justice is to conquer the evil. But from this paragraph, you might still, when you read, you might feel a little bit humorous. So from both learning how to write more detailed description, also will eventually know why the author insert such a paragraph, as if to make the readers a little bit relaxed. So in terms of the whole plot development, this is very important. So for now, I think you have grasped a little bit what I see important or attractive in terms of writing or in terms of its importance in the whole plot development. And since our time is limited, so I can only remind you a little bit, but have no time to talk more in depth. But anyway, before we wrap up our introduction for this time, I'm happy to also recommend you a little on the literary devices that the author has used. For example, the author used many figurative language in this chapter, like the use of simile. So as a literary term, simile means to compare two different things, but to find the similarities from these two different things. The example is rather obvious when they use the function words such as like or as. So let me show you a few examples. So similarly, when you say one thing looks like the other, you see here, let me find you. On the first page, the fourth paragraph, when they say, he drank slowly like a connoisseur. So connoisseur is also another high-level academic word. It means an expert on a specific subject. So it's a academic level word. It appears a lot in some English exams. So here, let me find it for you. So that's on the first page here. So connoisseur here.
Let me show you, sorry for it. Here, connoisseur. So it's the use of a figurative language. So when you say something looks like another, you use the function word like, and then you say, you see, he drank slowly like a connoisseur. So he drank like an expert who is very familiar in wine. Okay, so there is other examples when you say, when you use these literary device, when you say something looks like another, you say something is as beautiful as the other, or as here, let's say, as silent as a mouse, you see, as silent as a mouse. So these are the figurative language that I think the author used a lot. The author didn't use the other more difficult expressions in this chapter. So you will see eventually in other chapters. So here I would also pay attention to another new word that appeared at the bottom of the chapter. So abominable, just now we studied, overriding. So overriding, tyrannize, rebuff, incivility. So I'll show you after our class. So it's really very tight for our introduction during today's session. So finally, before we wrap up today's session, I'll just give you a couple of questions for discussion if you have time after the class. So question 1, find some examples of the use of figurative language. For example, simile. Find more examples when it used as or like. Question 2, what do you feel from the descriptive detail of the Captain Billy Bones regarding his dress on page 3? It's the paragraph that we learned about Captain Billy Bones' appearance and also what it can tell about his personality. And question 3, what atmosphere does Jim create in chapter 1? Okay, so here is what I would like to share with you for today's class. So may I just switch to Chinese? 我们今天这个时间，因为时间有限，所以不能就是和大家分享的更深入。所以只能抛砖引玉，和大家一起欣赏一些我觉得作者的描写很生动，对于人物的外表、人物的性格、人物的内心世界描绘的比较吸引人的地方。那么整个这个小说呢，其实从语法结构上并没有那么复杂，但是用词上也是比较考究，就是他知道在关键的时候怎么样能够去吸引人的读者的兴趣，所以还是有很多学术类的这种高端的词汇出现在这个小说里。所以这个小说呢很吸引人，很适合孩子们读，同时呢即使成人我们大人来读的话也会觉得很吸引人，因为它的用词就是在它的情节用词语法还有各种文学手法的表现当中，这个平衡作者把握的非常适度，所以这也就是为什么这个小说100多年一直很吸引人。今天我们时间就是有限，我也只能就我们感兴趣的一起来探讨一下。那么还有什么具体的我们可以互相交流的地方，我们可以课下再聊。好， Thank you for your attention. Bye.